Question. Have you ever pushed yourself to the edge, breaking both physically and mentally to discover a different version of yourself you didn't know you had? There is a silence that follows every fracture, a pause between who you were and who you might become. In that silence, something stirs, a faint rhythm, a pulse beneath the ruin, the echo of your soul learning how to breathe again. You may try to hold yourself together, to mask the cracks, but breaking isn't the end. It's the sound of truth finding its way out. In Japan, they call it kinetsugi, the art of mending what's broken with gold, not to hide the damage but to let it shine. And in Zen Buddhism, they speak of mu, which translates to nothingness, a space where illusion falls away, and from that emptiness, something true begins to take shape. It's tragic, it's haunting, but in that ache, that poignant stillness remains. And in it, you learn how to be whole again. You learn the art of breaking yourself. Look Back is a film based on the one-shot created by my goat,
好きな牛乳めぐミルク
今から浮きます。
Tatsuki Fujimoto. The movie challenges our understanding of creativity and ambitions, bringing together themes of friendship, rivalry, passion, and even self-destruction. It follows a girl named Fujino, who all of her life has been told she has this gift. Her friends praises her, her classmates ask for autographs, and her family thinks she could even become an artist with her skills. In school, she draws weekly manga for her 4th grade class. Every week, her manga is selected and put on the top of the paper. One day, her teacher calls her into his office and asks if she's willing to give up one slot to this girl named Kiyomoto. Reluctantly, she agrees, as in her eyes, a person who never attends school would never have the possibility to draw good. Okay. There's levels to this. Got it. When you put the two drawings next to each other, the difference in skill is obvious. From the shading to the textures, it resembles that of a pro. And it was at this very moment that for the first time, Fujino's art is seen as just ordinary. So what does she do now? She practices day and night. Weeks turns into months, months turns into years, and we watch her burn through sketches, books, anatomy, and watch her sacrifice time with her friends and family, all so that she could get better. She's now a 6th grader, and just like before, the weekly paper is out. And in that paper, there's, yet again, a clear difference in skill. Despite the effort she's put in, it just wasn't enough. So, she decides to quit. From here on, the story shows a different side of Fujino's life. Up to this point, her days has been entirely consumed by art, but now she's exploring a more social life, hanging out with friends, going to karate with her sister, and watching movies with her family. But throughout this entire time, there's like a void in her eyes, like there's no thought or life behind them at all. Graduation arrived and she started a new chapter in her life. Before she could leave, her teacher called her into his office again, but this time for a different reason. Kiyomoto never arrived to pick up her diploma, so he tasked Fujino to take her to her house. She rings the doorbell, but there's no response. The door is unlocked, but all the lights is off. There's a noise in the background, hinting there's someone home. She turns the corner and she's met with stacks upon stacks of sketchbooks. Before she could leave, she noticed a strip of paper. And despite her not drawing for years, this singular paper pulls her in, demanding her to draw. So she does exactly that. Until having noticed what happened, she runs out of the house in a panic to escape, only to be followed. The girl who followed her is Kiyomoto, and it's revealed she has been a massive fan of Fujino for the longest of time. She read every weekly manga strip that came out and looked forward to each new release, but noticed her manga no longer appeared on a weekly paper. So she asked Fujino one simple question. Why did you stop drawing manga? To which her response ended up being,
ていうか今漫画の賞に出す話考えてて、ステップアップするためにやめたって感じだけど。
which is an obvious lie. The scenes that follow is a quiet eruption, a glimpse to someone who's always wanted to draw, yet held herself back, convinced she could never be good enough. Each moment builds like pressure beneath the surface, years of frustration and longing collapsing all at once, until she finally breaks. She sprints home through the rain, bursts into her room without even stopping to dry off, and for the first time in years, she begins to draw again. Look Back initially seems like a story about Fujino and her difficult journey with art, but it soon becomes a tale of two girls, their lives, their bond, and how they come together to create a manga, while quietly exploring a few deeper themes along the way. Near the end, tragedy shatters everything, turning the story into something far deeper than it first appeared. But I'll leave that for you to experience yourself, since this video's focus isn't on that particular part of the story. Fujino's story is a quiet tragedy about ambition, guilt, and the painful beauty of growth. At first, she's a symbol of confidence, the kind of young artist who believes talent alone defines worth, but everything changes the moment she meets Kiyomoto. Throughout the film, we watch her shed versions after versions of herself, chasing something she can't quite put a name to. When her ego cracks, what seeps through isn't weakness, but is truth. Envy feeds into admiration, rivalry into connection, and through that, she rediscovers what it means to create again. By the end, Fujino isn't the same girl we met at the start. She's someone reborn through the act of breaking, someone who faced emptiness without flinching, and rebuilt herself not as who she once was, but as who she became. That's the art of breaking yourself, to lose, to grieve, to rebuild, and to realize that the cracks were never a flaw. Many stories over the years have told a similar tale. Works like Blue Period, Breaking Bad, Whiplash, The Climber, all explore a similar truth, the art of shedding your old self to emerge stronger, wiser, and more whole. They remind us that transformation is rarely easy, and that growth often comes through struggle and persistence. These type of stories always resonate with me. They feel the most relatable and inspiring because I can see the same passion, same struggle, the same drive reflected in the characters. As you can probably tell, I watched Look Back very recently. I'm a bit late, but the themes in this story really got me thinking about other works that explore a similar idea. So today, I'm going to talk about some other stories that dive into the art of breaking yourself. Vinland Saga is a manga turned anime about a kid seeking revenge on his father's killer. The story covers a plethora of themes, from political violence to human struggle, slavery, growth, atonement, and many, many more. At its core, it explores the destructive cycle of revenge, showing how obsession and hatred can consume a person, shaping their identity around violence. Beyond revenge, Vinland Saga delves into forgiveness, redemption, and a deeper meaning of strength. Thorfinn, the main character, embodies the art of breaking oneself. His innocence, ego, and moral compass are shattered through trauma, forcing him to confront the emptiness within. Throughout the entirety of the first season, we watch him develop into this young innocent kid into a ruthless killer. Having witnessed his father's death right in front of him showed him just how violent the world really is. And in this moment, he made it his personal life mission to be the one to end his father's killer's life. To do that, he joined Askeladd's band of mercenaries with guaranteed opportunities to have a 1v1 had he achieved something grand in a battle. The story skips from when he was a kid to a teenager, all the way to when he becomes an adult. Under Askeladd, he hones his skills as a warrior, enduring brutal battles, and is exposed to the lowest form of humanity. Initially, Thorfinn is driven by raw anger and obsession, seeing every fight as a step towards retribution. Yet, over time, his experiences alongside Askeladd exposes him to complexity, strategy, and even an unexpected mentorship. He begins to understand the nuances of leadership. Despite this growth, his path is still defined by hatred, and he remains trapped in the cycle of violence. The moment Askeladd dies marks the apex of this transformation. Thorfinn's long-held purpose vanishes, leaving him empty and directionless. It's here at the crossroads that Thorfinn's old self finally breaks. His vengeance fulfilled, yet his soul hollow, leaving only the fragments of who he once was. And from those fragments begins the slow, painful process of introspection, reflection, and ultimately the rebuilding of a new identity. One not forged by hate, but by understanding his past sins and choosing a life where he has no enemies.
Because I have no enemies.
When you hear the name Takehiko Inoue, the first thing that comes to mind for most are his works on Vagabond and Slam Dunk. Which makes sense, those two are really good manga. But one series that often is left out is his manga titled Real. Real is a manga that centers around 3 protagonists, each whose lives has been profoundly shaped by 2 things: physical disabilities and basketball. As their paths unfold, each of them faces the devastating, life-altering event that shatters their sense of self. What follows isn't just recovery, but a deeply human journey of growth, of learning to live, and to find meaning again in the aftermath of loss. The concept of breaking yourself takes on its most human form in this story. The manga doesn't glorify pain or redemption. It lives in the quiet, messy spaces between them. Every page feels heavy with regret, longing, and the ache of trying to move forward when life has already taken so much. Nomiya was once a promising athlete, yet a single mistake led him into an accident that paralyzes an innocent girl, leaving him with guilt that festers for years. He quits school, isolates himself, and drifts through life haunted by a past he can't undo. But beneath the self-loathing, there's something deeply human. The desperate desire to be forgiven, even when you can't forgive yourself. His story isn't about redemption through success, but through acceptance. He breaks himself not through ambition, but through remorse. And it's in that pain that he begins to understand compassion and tries to live a life seeking to be a better person. Togawa, on the other hand, represents another kind of breaking, the loss of identity. Once a runner, his leg is amputated due to an illness, stripping him from the one thing that defined him. His response isn't peaceful, but is instead filled with rage. He channels every ounce of pride and bitterness into wheelchair basketball, obsessing over competition, as if victory could make him whole again. But as the story unfolds, his ignorance and anger begins to crack. Beneath the facade of control lies the fear of being ordinary, of never being enough again. Then there's Takashi, a once golden boy now confined to a wheelchair. His life, once built on talent and popularity, collapsed in an instant. His journey through rehabilitation mirrors a psychological descent, the grief of losing your body, your status, and your sense of purpose. But it's through that grief that he learns something profound, that worth isn't tied to ability or appearance. His struggle becomes an exploration of dignity. For me, Real stands as Inoue's most powerful and personal work. A story I constantly find myself returning to, even long after finishing it. Having played sports for much of my life, and still doing so occasionally today, I can deeply relate to the same passion, discipline, and quiet desperation that drives its characters forward. It's the story about redemption and transformation, told through the perspective of 3 individuals, each fighting their own battles, yet all striving for the same sense of purpose. What makes Real so captivating is how it shines a light on people often overlooked in fiction, those living with disabilities. In a medium where strength is usually shown through power or perfection, Real flips that idea on its head. It challenges the common misconceptions that disabled people are limited or helpless, instead portraying them as the ones with the deepest resolve, the strongest spirit, and the most unshakable will to keep moving forward. Attack on Titan is probably one of the most popular known animes today. Many of you seen or read the manga, so there's no need for me to go too in deep into this. Instead, let's just focus on a specific character that fits the concept of this video. Honestly, there's a lot to choose from. You got Eren, Levi, Erwin, Historia, and many more. But for today's video, I'll do a little twist and focus on Reiner.
ライダーやるんだ今ここで勝負は今ここで決める
Reiner's arc revolves dissociative tendencies. At times, he addresses one persona as if the other isn't present, a clear coping mechanism for the unbearable tension between duty and consciousness. He carries the lives of his people on his shoulder, the expectations of Marley, and the consequences of every kill. Each act of violence further corrodes his identity, but he cannot escape it. Reiner's body is strong, but his identity is under siege, showing that breaking isn't just physical or external. It can be a slow, grinding process of moral, ethical, and emotional conflict. While some characters break in order to rebuild and find a new identity, Reiner breaks under external expectations and moral conflict, showing the psychological toll of living in a state of enforced duality. Breaking yourself isn't always about physical loss or trauma. Sometimes it's the internalized burden of being forced to live a life that contradicts your true self. His arc is tragic yet super realistic. He's one of the most interesting written characters in all of Attack on Titan, and I find his character dichotomy to be really fascinating compared to most of the other cast. Breaking yourself isn't about destruction for its own sake. It's about facing the parts of yourself you've ignored, shattered, or denied, whether through loss, ambition, guilt, trauma, or physical limitation. It's painful, it's messy, and it's often lonely, but it's also where growth, understanding, and true strength are born. From Fujino's quiet heartbreak and look back, to Thorfinn's journey from vengeance to peace, to Reiner's endless internal struggles in Attack on Titan, to Nomiya, Togawa, and Takashi confronting their own bodies and limitations in real. These stories show us that breaking isn't the end. It's a threshold, a space where the old self dies and a new self begins to emerge. So next time you feel lost, overwhelmed, or broken, remember this. It's in those cracks that your story begins to take shape. That poignant stillness is what remains. And in that stillness, you find the quiet art of becoming whole again.